Welcome to my Quote of the Day series. I start my live content with a quote and a story about why it's important to me in the moment. I share my experiences in case it may help someone else on their journey. You never know when someone might need the message you share today. I also want to thank you for spending time with me, for subscribing if you choose, and sharing your stories too. My quote of the night is: peace is a journey of 1,000 miles, and it must be taken one step at a time. So I was looking for something about peace tonight and inner peace and achieving peace and getting to a peaceful state because I felt it creeping in today. And what I mean by that is I felt anxiety creeping in, and I felt like the beginnings of overwhelm and overthinking. So, and I kind of had an experience yesterday like that too, although they were very different experiences. So the one yesterday was diffusing some road rage. And the short version of it was there were some people doing some work. There was a guy attempting to direct traffic. Now, it was like two cars. And they were coming in opposite directions. But he was super impatient. Now, I'm sure he was dealing with some stress. Like, there was some, I'm sure that they were trying to get their job done and all of that. I get that I don't know what he was dealing with at the moment, but he was super impatient with his arm waving, and he was trying to just get me to move along, and there was a stop sign and I stopped for it because I was like, okay, you're not a cop and I don't know if you are seeing all angles. Now, there was nobody there, but I don't trust that stuff at all. I had an experience once where someone was directing me to back up, and I ended up backing up into someone else's car. Luckily, it didn't really do much to the other car, like a little scratch. And I left my insurance and all worked out fine. But the guy was really snotty about it, and it just left a bad taste in my mouth about just outright trusting someone directing traffic, especially because I'm going to be responsible if there happens to be any kind of accident or anything like that. So I stopped at the stop sign, and then he was quickly waving me, and I was like, what the heck? So I could have let that eat at me all day yesterday. And for the rest of the drive into work, I kept going back and forth between just let it go. It's fine. Whatever that guy was dealing with, it made him frustrated. My past experience made me frustrated. Like, it's done now. I'm never going to see that dude again. And it all worked out fine. But that could have easily been something that I was irritated about all the way to work, ranted about it to people at work just to get it out of my system. And I was just like, just let it go. It's not worth holding on to that negative energy any longer. And it took me a while to actually work through it because I had a lot of back and forth between he was being rude and I'm not gonna trust somebody to direct me and all this stuff, and just like I don't need it to affect my whole day. And I let it go. By the time I got to work, um I still had a couple thoughts about it after I got to work, but by the time I got into work and started working, it just fell away. And I don't struggle as much with road rage as some people do. So I have had my moments for sure, but I find letting go of road rage is probably easier for me than it might be for someone else. But I did really have conscious, okay, you have the choice to just let it go and not let it affect your day. So a few steps towards peace. And I allowed myself to just let it dissipate on its own. The other thing that happened was today I found some interesting information out that I am going to be able to utilize next spring ish. It's going to require me really looking at the information and assessing how it's going to be useful to me. And then I'm going to have to derive things to benefit myself from that information. And it's going to require like me doing things I'm already doing, but also working within a framework that is established to make my perspective of it mesh with someone else's perspective of it. And without like, exaggerating. Like, I don't want to exaggerate things. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is aligning with that information that I found. And I started to really overthink it and start to kind of stress myself out. Not like extremely so, but just like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work now. I really have to focus on the things I need to do. And am I going to have time? Am I going to make enough time? Am I going to actually like follow through? Because I feel the creepings of burnout coming. But I have 8 months. Do I really have 8 months? I have almost 8 months to work through the information I found and also address all the things I need to address, and also then kind of make the two things mesh together to then deal with them in the spring. Um, and that helped me get out of that almost panic cycle I was starting to get into, where it was just like I started just like, oh my gosh, am I actually going to do the things? And then and then usually if I get too wound up, I freeze and then I turn into procrastinate version of myself, which means I'll blow it off until, a month before it's due, as opposed to just pacing myself over these next 8 months, really like being thorough and diligent and not like waiting to cram it all in at the end. Um, And if I can just keep kind of, anytime I start to get into that overwhelm, anxiety, overthink cycle that leads to the burnout and then the cram at the end procrastination version of myself, I might be able to avoid all the stress along that path. Fingers crossed. Because that is something I am working on. I am working on a more even keeled version of myself. you know, I expect to trip up. I expect to have moments where I'm not dealing with it in an ideal, peaceful way, but it's 1,000 steps. I'm not going to be there today. I'm going to reset. And then when it starts to build again, figure out how to reset and then, just kind of develop that pacing. So that's why those things were on my mind. That's why that quote stuck out to me today. Is because it's a journey we are on. We're going there. We're not there all the time, and we won't live there when we get there because it's not permanent. Nothing's permanent. Um, so yeah, that's what it was today. Not overly complicated thoughts, just reminding myself and anyone who feels like they need that message that you can work through bouts of overwhelm and bouts of anxiety. um it's possible. It's possible to do that. It's difficult, and sometimes it takes a lot of conscious effort, and we'll see how I feel about it in 8 months, if I've actually paced myself and kept myself out of that overwhelming state. But it's a learning process. I'm 44 and I'm still learning new ways to handle my own bullshit. So, what are you going to do? But I'm trying, man. I'm trying my best. Thanks for dropping in. If you want to hang out, I stream live on Twitch and YouTube Thursday evenings and middays on Sunday. I hope you have a lovely day, night, time, wherever you are, whenever you are. I'll see you next time.